This is TWiT.
Tech Break is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. IT Pro's new Cyber Skills is a training tool for all members of your organization. Get cybersecurity awareness training for non-IT professionals and secure your business on all fronts. TWiT listeners can receive up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution plan. The discount is based on the size of your team when you fill out their form. Secure your business. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit today.
I got to do a shift to .NET Conf yesterday.
Yes,
So,
I watched.
You saw me.
I liked it.
I was doing the MC gig, which is a pretty fun gig.
Yeah.
I got to introduce all of the
That's
guests.
neat.
Yeah. It was a good .NET Conf. .NET 8 is an important version of .NET.
Yeah. So why? I mean, what's the big deal?
I don't think there's a bunch of stuff that came together on that. It is
LTS.
Yeah, it is a long-term support one, but that's becoming less meaningful. Some companies are big on it's a 3-year version.
Actually,
rather
if you
than
don't,
a 2 version.
Quick diversion here.
Yeah.
Obviously, the old .NET, the .NET we know from back in the day, the 4.8. Yeah. The .NET framework or whatever, right? So this is a thing that still ships on Windows.
Yep, because Windows depends on it.
Right. It's tied to the Windows support lifecycle. It's tied to Windows, right?
It also has a 10-year support.
because of when it was invented or implemented. Yep. So when 4.8 actually is a fairly recent release.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in Windows forever. But then there's this other.
Remember, the VB runtime is still in Windows.
Yes, that's right.
And it really hasn't had anything happen to it since 99.
Yep.
Like it is forever.
Yeah, it sure is. So the new .NET, maybe not obviously, but it is cross-platform and open source.
And an annual release cadence.
And what was it? Between the 3.x and 5 version, it became .NET.
Yeah. When they went to 5, they said
it's .NET. Right. So this is the new .NET. So this is something that's revved annually. It's on a very predictable very predictable development schedule.
November 13th.
The life cycle is 18 months or 3 years, depending on every other year.
Well, it's really 2 versions or 5 versions. Right?
There you go. So how do you explain it? What's your elevator pitch for .NET? What is this?
I mean, it's why this LTS, like that whole effect is really, the point is to stay up, right? Is to use the new versions. And, one of the big things has always been performance improvements. That you can take your existing .NET 7 app, recompile it with .NET 8, and not only does it just work, it's faster.
Right. And if nothing else changed, that's still a huge benefit.
And then the question is, are you using the new features like this, new language constructs in C#12? A bunch of the new capabilities in.
It's also cool things. You can compile to native code if you want to, and you don't need to have the support libraries or anything.
No. Once upon a time, we did the whole DLL approach to save memory. Remember, we needed to save memory and disk space.
Right.
If we don't need to do those things, now it's more about reliability. Compile it as a complete executable with everything.
Standalone exe. Yep.
Yeah, and it'll run. And you just don't care about versions of anything at that point.
Right. Yeah. So, but .NET in general, but .NET 8 specifically encompasses so many different, software platforms, I guess we'll call them. Obviously, .NET MAUI.
Yeah, all the different
ASP
feature stacks.
Yeah. Blazor.
The new version of Blazor.
Yep.
And so one of the things that made 8 important was this is kind of the third version of MAUI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the third version of Blazor at the same time. And Microsoft has a knack for the third versions are
It is real. I mean, this is real. This is not a one-off. We still talk about it. This actually still happens.
It still happens. And it makes sense. You get the first bits out there, and what you didn't get done shows up in the second version. And then you've gotten enough feedback, enough utilization that the third one is the one where you really have customers feedback into.
There's also a neat thing. Part of the show I watched when you were emceeing was with David and Maddie talking about .NET MAUI and this notion that, because of the new way that software is developed, you don't really you go in with some goals for this version, but you can actually accomplish more. It's created in the open. They're taking pull requests from users on the outside of Microsoft, and a bunch of them get integrated into the product. And so when version 8 actually comes out, they actually delivered more
than they had
promised. Right? Yeah.
Because of the community itself.
Yeah. Which is really
fascinating. Right?
Yeah.
That's the place that we're at now. So, I mean, it was a good time was had by all. It's frustrating that they're the same week.
Yeah. So to be clear, right. So we have Microsoft Ignite here in Seattle.
Yes.
And then .NET Conf has been a virtual event, I guess.
Always been a virtual event.
And how many years has that been going?
Since .NET Core. So 2017, 2016.
Yep.
And so, but it's always been a virtual event out of the studios, what used to be called the Channel 9 Studios. Before that, the MSNBC Net. Now it's called DevRel Studios.
Okay. I still have a picture of I don't know what to call it. It's not an office, but it looked like the control area of the Death Star in Star Wars. And it looked like this is where Big Brother controls the world from. Just classic.
The joke is in Star Wars, that control panel, that exactly the laser, that is an audio control panel.
Oh no, really? I didn't know that. That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah, they repurpose. Of course it is.
They didn't make anything. No, they just took an actual one. Well, that looks right. Got the square blinky lights. Let's go.
That's very funny.
Yeah, so that was back when MSNBC was the ongoing concern. This dates back.
And they still had the double lock set, right? Because it was a sort of business with a business kind of thing, and it's still there. It's a nuisance to go to those.
Is it in New Jersey? Where is it?
No, it's in the campus in Redmond.
It's Building 25.
In Redmond. Oh, okay.
Huh. Yeah, it's opposite of 25.
I have a lot of memories from that building. Anyway, so it was you went over and emceed part of that show.
Yeah, I got a 4-hour shift.
And they do was it 3 days? It's live, mostly live.
The first day is sort of your traditional single track keynotes, presentations from the product teams, that sort of thing. And then there's an online party at the end of the day.
Right.
And then the second day, they go to a 24-hour around the world. So there are presenters literally all around the world that get involved, so that it becomes this huge community event over the last 2 days.
Like Ignite, if you don't get to watch any of that live, it's no problem. It's all going to be there.
Everything's recorded
up on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, but there are folks who stay up all night to watch this stuff. Right, like to just see their friends too, like all of these MVPs and things. Like everybody submits to be a part of .NET Conf and to show off what you've done with the product.
It has a kind of a homespun quality to it that I really like. It is the polar opposite in some ways of this big orchestrated events.
Yes, with our hanging light things.
Yeah, exactly.
So like it is much more homegrown.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
You mean like TWiT? Yeah, I that's the way to go. I love that. Yeah, just kind of folksy down home. Sitting around the Cracker Barrel, chewing the fat.
I'm not a big city developer, but if I was, it's nice.
Fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like more fun, frankly.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's more personable for sure.
Yeah.
So Scott Hanselman was on there, David
Love
Orton.
Scott. Love him.
Yeah,
and Scott Hunter and Paul Yuck wrapped up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Performances, and
Scott Hunter came down from his cloud of prominence and.
And the other big piece was David Fowler, who's now a distinguished engineer, and I always refer to him now as distinguished engineer David Fowler.
Nice.
Who is leading the Aspire project.
Okay.
So that was one of the big statements. Aspire.
Not Inspire.
Not Inspire, Aspire. And actually, if you think about it, it's a pretty darn good name in the sense of it's making real cloud software.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is about a tool suite and a working environment for software that's going to be natively cloud. So meaning it's going to be elastic in scale. It's going to
it's agnostic. It should be able to run anywhere.
Platform agnostic. Right. And so really David's been leading the initiative to put all the pieces together. Like all of this was out there. You could do it. It was just hard.
Yeah.
And so now to say, hey, let's make it a little
you want to use a tool and have just wind up all the pieces you need and just plug in your.
The old line is like, I want to fall in the pit of success. Right. And so like making mistakes is harder in the tool. It tends to lead you to the right things to do for providing that scalability, manageability, instrumentation, and diagnostics.
I meant to look this up and I just ran out of time. We've been kind of busy today, but sometime this past summer, Microsoft kind of came out with sort of a formal proposal for this thing. And the idea was that we're going to kind of formalize what a web app means.
Right.
Like a cloud app, excuse me. And, at the basis, there'll be some number of cloud services or cloud infrastructure. It's agnostic. You can plug in, you could just be on S3 or AWS or whatever. You could have whatever data sources you want. But there's going to be this kind of a standard. And the Aspire, as I understand it, is almost like the .NET 8 implementation
of this CNCF, or the cloud native standards for how you want to build.
And it was kind of a surprise too, right? They did telegraph this.
They held on to it pretty well.
Yeah,
and it seems to be well received. But it's an aspirational goal to build software that runs well in the cloud.
That's the name.
That's the way I think of it.
Yeah,
and,
I think so too.
And I'm delighted to see that new project like that. And it's exactly that problem. It's like, hey, I just give me a starting point.
Right.
So that when I start building my app the way I know how to build it, I'm not crippling myself for doing more in the cloud.
The part of .NET that I care about the most now, I guess, is .NET MAUI.
Yeah.
And part of it involves that 7 stages of grief over the death of the native Windows app, that this isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
but
it exists.
Yeah, but
WinForms is still there.
It is. Yeah, but does that exist? Is it in a coma somewhere? I mean, it's, I know it's, technically it's active.
And hundreds of thousands of apps still using it. It's still being.
But if you're looking for a modern framework, a modern environment, whatever it might be, to build a native Windows app, MAUI is sort of it. It's kind of interesting because it's WinUI 3 on Windows, but it's also cross-platform. And the stages of grief thing is based on the fact that, back in the day, there would be these formal standards for title bars and window buttons and how controls work.
The MDI standard.
Yeah. And it's a little looser today, but there's also these kind of this notion of what I'll call, for lack of a better term, modern app and modern app kind of design templates or whatever, designs, whatever. Again, a little looser, but these are the apps. If you open up, say, Notepad is an interesting example because it's a modern UI on top of old code. But if you go into settings, the settings is not a dialogue. It's part of the app. You do your thing, you get out. It's just a design pattern. It's just a different style. And MAUI supports all that stuff. So because it's cross-platform, you could, like Flutter might be, or like web app can be. You're going to write you're not going to write a Windows app, really, right? You're writing an app that runs on iOS and Android,
right?
And Mac through Catalyst and Windows.
Yeah.
And what they've been doing over the past 3 versions is putting more and more desktop-specific functionality in there.
Because they started with Xamarin Forms, so they had iOS and Android sort of nailed. Although there was plenty to fix in Xamarin Forms still,
for sure.
But
they did. It's a simpler project.
Getting better.
Yeah.
But landing it on desktop, it's the same problem that Flutter has.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing that's interesting is it really benefits the whole world because you have an iOS app, we'll call it. It could run on the iPad, and you want it to look different. You want it to, fill the screen and look different. People could have a touchpad and a keyboard. You want to have keyboard shortcuts. You want to have mouse pointer interaction. And so you could build this app that scales between these different devices and different screen sizes and all that stuff. And it's gotten better. And so it's never going to be that thing I sort of always wanted from the beginning, which was just Windows, because that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And also just Windows, sort of classic Windows, these are more, like I said, more modern design patterns. I'm not even sure what to call it. I'm sorry. But and a lot of old school people like us, we sort of see this thing and we're like, oh, come on, really? But it's like, actually, this is the world. And it's the one I always keep my eye on. It's very, very interested in .NET MAUI, and I like watching it mature.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's a great time. Like everybody's very excited. The new version has done well, and it'll be good to see the adoption rate going.
Yeah. Right.